You and enable auto captions. Okay. So what we have happening tonight is very exciting. As you all know, we had 3 openings for board members, and the board has decided to put forward Brenda Wills as a new board member candidate. And we wanted to give her, so the procedure is that we recommend someone, and then you all have to vote on that person to affirm that recommendation. And we want to give Brenda a couple minutes to introduce herself to you folks. You're on.
Thank you. I'm moved to River Road in 2019 in May and lived in Echo Apartments for almost 2 years. And I moved there because I wanted to get to know the neighborhood, as I was a member of what was then Oakley Meadow Co-housing. So that we now call ourselves River Road, River Song Co-housing, which gets confusing when I'm talking to people as whether I'm talking co-housing or community organization. I also got involved and got to know people on this board or on this community, working with the Social Justice Committee over the last 3 years. I'm retired United Methodist clergy and spent the last half of my career, the last 20 years, being a chaplain. And the last 8 years of that chaplaincy was at Newport on the coast here in Oregon. I came to Eugene because I really like the people and I like our River Road neighborhood. River Song Co-housing has given me the opportunity to take some amazing classes in facilitating meetings and helping people sort through ideas and come to some good conclusions and do good work. We've spent a lot of time on Zoom building community so that when we move together, we kind of know who each other are. So I have those skills that I bring to this board besides just being a part of the neighborhood.
I thought Claire Syrett was older.
And if you would make me co-host, I'd help people remember to mute while we're having a meeting tonight.
That's okay. It's going to get complicated, Brenda. Thank you for offering.
Okay.
So I want to, so how we vote is, first of all, you have to live in the River Road neighborhood and you have to have come to one meeting in the past year. And we're going to do it on the honor system tonight. And so what you need to do is go to your reactions button. And if you qualify to vote and you want to support Brenda to be on the board, you click the green button. And if you don't want Brenda to be on the board, you click the red button. And then somewhere I get to see the total number of buttons.
It's in the participants list.
Yeah, I see it. Okay. Is everybody voted? I guess I should vote. Okay.
Green.
Okay, so thank you. Congratulations, Brenda. Now you get to go to 2 meetings a month, but she's been coming anyway, so. Very nice. Thank you, everybody. And you can uncheck your buttons now. Are there any other announcements, Susan?
You know, I'm going to say it. Yes, on October 2nd, we are hosting a recycling event at the Emerald Park picnic shelter. This is going to be a resurrection of those events that we had pre-COVID. I'm very pleased to say Kathy McGuire is assisting me in this project, and we are super pleased to partner with the folks at the River Road Parks District. And the event will be from 9 until noon on October 2nd. That is a Sunday, and we are collecting 2s, 4s, and 5s that do not fit in your current bin. So please make sure you check out what goes in your current recycling bin. Do not bring those. And we will have some flyers and multiple postings over the coming weeks with details on what to bring. But start collecting those items. Please don't throw them into the garbage in the landfill. Let us take them for you. Thanks.
And all the instructions were in the most recent newsletter. Brenda.
The Social Justice Committee normally would meet on Wednesday night of this week, but instead we're meeting and taking advantage of a way to support Reality Kitchen by having an outdoor meeting at 11 o'clock on Friday, which would be August the 12th. We're working on land acknowledgement. We might call this committee that's actually meeting the Land Acknowledgement Working Group. But anyone who's interested in being a part of this committee or the work around land acknowledgement are welcome to join us. Reality Kitchen, 11 a.m. on this coming Friday.
Thank you. John.
Yeah, first of all, could you make me co-host?
Of course.
Second of all, you keep your eye out in the mail. If you are a city resident living in River Road, you will be getting a ballot for a recall election for city council in the next few weeks. I encourage you all to participate. On another piece of news, the board is actually planning programs ahead. I just want to give you an idea of what you can expect in the future. September, we're proposing to have the superintendent of 4J come to our meeting and tell us about North Eugene High School and its rebuild and what's going on with the ancillary programs there. In October, we will have our usual candidates forum. So any local candidate running for election in River Road, we'll invite them to attend so you can hear why they're running for office and why you might want to vote for them. And finally, in November, we are hoping to have a program with the Corps of Engineers on the potential of a dam failure and what that might look like if here in River Road. Get a boat now, folks. So those are the programs we have ahead. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to get excited about those. Thank you.
Okay, any other announcements?
Yes. Hi, I'm attempting to put together a cider press. I'm trying to get a cider press from Eugene Toolkit for the last weekend of September, first weekend of October. And I'm curious if anyone has fruit trees where the fruit's just fallen on the ground and you'd like to donate your fruit or participate, please drop your interest in the chat and I'll reach out for you for your contact info. Thank you.
I've got a question on that, Missy. Is there a place to store apples in waiting for that a date?
I can store them on my property.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other announcements? Okay, then it sounds like we should charge ahead into our regular program. John, you're facilitating that, so why don't you introduce our guests and tell us what's going on?
Thank you. For those of you that have been coming to meetings over the years, normally August is our Meet the Electeds monthly or annual meeting. This is the one time a year that we can get our city councilor to attend. So in the past, we've invited our legislators, our county commissioner, our city councilor, and even our eWeb commissioner to come and talk to us. But given that we're gearing up to work our way through the neighborhood plan, what we thought we would do this year is invite the two individuals who be instrumental in hopefully approving that plan to come and hear a presentation from us about what's going on with the plan, what issues still need to be resolved, and therefore educate you folks at the same time, give them an opportunity to ask questions, share their thoughts, and then when that's done, open it up to you for your thoughts and questions as well. So with the august help of Susan Kittleson, who put together a slideshow that I could never possibly create, I will go ahead and launch that and we will go through it. Okay, let's see. So let me make this a slideshow. So do you see River Road Community Organization annual meeting screen?
Yes, you got it.
Great, thank you. So how do I get to, I need to see my notes. Yeah, you can tell I'm not good at this. So while I'm trying to do that, let me first of all welcome City Councilor Clara Syrett and County Commissioner Pat Farr. I could list a whole bunch of accomplishments that they've done for us over the years or the past year, but I'll limit it to just one to each. Councilor Syrett, thank you so much for your work in trying to get an ordinance that will deal with the vibration problems that our neighbors have felt for 2 years now from Zippo laminators. I know that's not done yet, but you're instrumental in getting that started, and we thank you for that. And County Commissioner Farr, thank you so much for once again instigating the process to get us funding for our neighborhood association so that we can be equally funded by the city and the county, enable us to send out information. Okay, now, I guess I'll just wing this. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. As I said earlier, we will start with Councilor Syrett and Commissioner Farr, and we'll share their information with them, get them to join us in feedback and questions. And then when we're done, we'll turn it over to everybody for Q&A. And when at that point in time, we'll ask you to raise your hand in the Zoom app as you've done earlier, and we'll recognize you as you can then speak. We really want to talk about the topic at hand, which is the neighborhood plan, and remain respectable at all times. That was not the case at the Santa Clara meeting last week, so we're being very careful here. If you roam off topic, we'll ask you to return to it, and if you don't, we'll move on to the next person. I don't think we're going to have that problem, but I just want to make that clear. So where is my, let me shut this down and start again. Maybe I can make it work.
Claire, I that they spelled your name like my name.
And they
So, well-
elevated me to commissioner.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, sorry about that. I missed that. Would you guys like to say something while I'm trying to save myself here? Claire, would you like a minute or two?
Sure, John. I'll say there's probably a view option to like a preview next slide, or presenter's notes. That
Yep, I'm looking. Thank you.
I'm not any expert on PowerPoint either, but
This is Brenda saying, I don't think, John, that you can see your notes and show them on a Zoom call at the same time. If you want to see your notes, we have to see them too. I would print my notes off ahead of time.
Okay, thank you, Brenda.
I think what you're trying to do is impossible.
Okay.
On Zoom, not on Teams. On Teams, you can totally do it. Just thought
Of
I'd throw that
course,
in.
it's the Microsoft
Former
voice.
Microsoft employee, yeah.
Okay, Claire Syrett, would you like to say something?
Hi everyone. Thanks so much for having me and Commissioner Farr here this evening. I do kind of miss the elected officials roundup that we normally get this time of year with y'all, but this is a very important topic, your neighborhood plan and where you're at in terms of being on the cusp of hopefully adopting it. So I'm happy to be here, mainly to listen, but also to offer suggestions, recommendations, and see how we can bring forward. You muted me. Was I talking too much?
No, you're back on if that's the
Okay.
case.
Okay. I just wanted to say, give you all and the Santa Clara neighborhood a big kudos for the incredible part, the very hard work and incredible product that you guys have produced. It's really quite impressive.
Pat, would you like to throw something in there?
Thanks, John. Not much to say beyond what Councilor Clara has said, other than I really appreciate these meetings. Of all the neighborhood groups that I attend, this group seems to be the most inquisitive, the most informed, and also the most demanding, which is a good thing. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
Okay. Am I back on screen again? Do you see a screen that says discussion guidance?
Yeah, we also see your notes, John.
On what can I do? Am I stuck with this?
I think you are. Either you got to go in presentation mode and go without notes, or have it printed in ahead of time. It's just a Zoom thing.
Well, here we are. I can't do either because I can't remember what I was going to say.
So just
Okay.
go forward with showing us your notes.
Fair enough. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, so this has been a long process, especially if you consider all the processes that came before for River Road and Santa Clara. As you all know, we're a unique part of the city county in that we are both kind of. So there's been numerous transition plans over the years, and we're hopefully going to use this neighborhood plan to move beyond those. So here's a quick history of what has gone on. In 2011, the River Road and Santa Clara neighborhoods came together to create a program called SCROLL, Santa Clara River Road Outreach and Learning. Jerry Finnegan from Santa Clara is the great acronym maker. So he named the SCROLL, and we worked for a while with that process and then transitioned to SCRIPT, Santa Clara River Road Implementation Planning Team. And out of that came a request that the city and the county that we start a neighborhood plan. They nicely agreed to let us do that. We worked in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and a very intensive outreach to all of our neighbors. Had 3 large meetings at North Eugene High School with about 100 to 150 people attending. We had extensive online information. And out of that, we developed a set of draft goals, policies, and action items that we then coalesced to create what we hope to be a neighborhood plan, and then COVID hit. And all that extensive outreach came to a grinding halt. We did have a neighborhood group called the Community Advisory Committee that has worked with the city staff to further develop and refine what we had in order to get us to where we are now, which is almost ready to present a draft plan. So there's been a lot of work gone into this. You haven't heard much about it in the past few years, but we're about to change that. So there are 5 core areas of focus in our plan. Economic development. We want to support local businesses, increase employment, start a business network, and create a mixed-use corridor along River Road. Transportation, we want public safety on River Road in our neighborhoods and on Beltline, expand our transit offerings and increase walking and biking opportunities as well. Parks and natural resources, we want to enhance our waterways, protect our greenways, preserve our agricultural land, and prioritize recreation. Our land use actions, we want to develop design transitions into more intensive development, maintain a low density on the greenway, support housing options for folks of all income and size options, and encourage a 20-minute neighborhood. And finally, make a more vibrant community. So I'll stop right now and ask Claire and Pat if you have any questions or comments, or shall I keep going?
I don't have any questions. I'm pretty familiar with this part of your goals.
Okay.
No questions. Thank you, Councilor, and no question from me either, John, at this point.
Okay. I'll stop every 3 or 4 slides and ask again. How's that? Okay. So current status of the plan, actions, and alignments. I know this is probably very hard to see. I wonder if I can zoom in at all. I'm not gonna mess with it. I don't know how. I'll be honest. So in those 5
Increase the
areas,
increase the size of your screen, of your thing down the bottom right slider.
oh, thank you, Clara. I am learning. As long as I don't make it so large that it doesn't fit. There we go. I think that's as good as it gets unless I do this.
Everybody individually can zoom in on your own screen to read it as needed.
Thank you. I appreciate all this help. So the bottom line, I'll get to it, is there, we have 258 action items in our neighborhood plan and action item, which is a very ambitious plan. As Pat says, we're a very active, involved, and thoughtful group. So we've come up with a whole bunch of stuff to do. And they are divided into, again, as I said, the 5 areas. There are, as I said, 258 actions, and they vary in ability to be done between easy, moderate, and difficult. So our hope is that we manage to get them all done, but we acknowledge that some of them are not going to be as easy as others. And then, as I said in my note, this is a more ambitious plan than prior neighborhood plans and extends far beyond the typical land use and transportation topics. Okay. So there are also other things that have already been decided that you might think would be relevant here, and they are, but they're already decided. So the middle housing code amendments have occurred during the time that we've been doing our neighborhood plan. We will match those requirements. They supersede what we're doing. They originally came from the state. Eugene developed specific code. There's not anything that we will be doing to differ from that. Moving ahead is also part of the planning process that affects our EMX corridor. It does impinge on the neighborhood plan in that it does provide some of the action items that we call for at our plan, but again, it's a separate process, and we will work with that. So it also points out that because we have taken longer than we anticipated for this plan, these things are impinging upon us. And that the lesson to be heard here is, let's get it done before something else comes down the pike. Okay, so we're going to focus on the difficult areas, and I'll stop after this one for the electeds to respond. In economic development, the difficult actions we anticipate will be a challenge to
Hey,
achieve.
Carrie, do you want to listen to this? It's about economic and development.
Deborah, would you mind
Okay.
muting yourself? Thank you.
Deborah, we heard that. If you could mute yourself. Thank you.
It says mute.
No.
You are now. Thank you. For economic development, our challenges are going to be to develop and adopt land use code that favors small independent businesses over large national chains. That's a message we heard loud and clear from the beginning. We hope to create a neighborhood business network or association that brings all the businesses together. That doesn't exist now. And we're proposing to rezone properties along River Road that both support economic growth that is consistent with the neighborhood vision. Our hope is to create 20-minute neighborhoods. Your ability to walk or bike to a business and not have to get in your car and go to Delta Village or wherever you can find what you need here, we hope. So I said I'd stop here. Time for feedback or questions. Councilor and Commissioner.
Sure, John. So I think it's totally accurate to say that developing.
John, just for respect, would you please stop sharing so we could see them as they respond?
I suppose I could do that. I hope I could get back.
That would be really helpful.
Or Brenda, you might have it in speaker view rather than gallery. So And taking it down means I won't be able to see it, but that's okay.
I'll leave it up. Sorry, Brenda.
The land use code that favors, I mean, I don't think there is a way that land use code can favor particular ways that businesses are incorporated. So, you know, I'm blanking out on my business type names, a Starbucks versus a local coffee place. The land use code wouldn't necessarily be the place to ensure that you are able to attract more of those smaller independent businesses than national chains. However, I do think how much square footage is available in certain buildings could dictate that. And I know the city of Ashland in their downtown core is pretty much exclusively small independent businesses. So they have found a way to do it. I don't know how they did that, but that would be something I would need to consult with our economic development folks about. So that's just one comment at this point.
Thank you. Before you go, Pat, back in the day when we talked about nodes, one of the things we did was to limit the types of businesses that could have drive-throughs, and to banks and pharmacies and not restaurants. And that had a side impact of thereby prohibiting things like McDonald's and Carl's Jr. and such. And that's something we're thinking about proposing in this as well.
Thanks, John. And to everyone who's listening, I think you know that John Belcher talks with authority because of his many years on the Eugene Planning Commission. I worked side by side with John on that. And John, you were a great addition always to that Planning Commission. I'm going to be more general in what I'm saying about the plan. You live in the urban transition. The urban transition is the most complex area that we deal with, that any city/county ever would deal with. And John said this is a more ambitious plan than other neighborhood plans, and he's right. And it needs to be more ambitious because it's a far more complex neighborhood than virtually any other neighborhood in the county. You know, when I first joined the city council back in 1995, we'd just gotten started with the Whitaker refinement plan. And it was a complex plan also. Whitaker was complex. The mixed use plan took a long time to develop, a long time to put together, but you know what? In the end, it turned out to be the right thing. And the transition in the Whitaker neighborhood has been significant in those years. The work that you're putting in today seems at this point in time slow, but you know, it's going to pay off. I guarantee you that. And at some point in time, we'll look back and we'll say, look at all the work that went into this and look at the amazing improvements that occurred. That's what I'm looking forward to. And, you know, as we work in the urban transition, you have public safety issues, you have transportation issues, you have economic issues, and that no other neighborhood has that. But I think you can count on Councilor Syrett being there throughout this entire process, and you can most certainly count on me.
Thank you both. Thank you for those kind words, Pat. Okay, let's go on to another difficult area. Community, not necessarily so difficult. What we hope to do here is review our current service provisions and adopt a plan of action that addresses the coordination, improvement, and or potential transition of essential services as River Road and Santa Clara neighborhoods evolve. As you probably know, if you're not a city resident, there are an awful lot of services that if your neighbor is in the city, they get and you don't. As simple as not having to pay for a library card, and as impactful as not being able to call the police when you get broken into. So we're hoping to find ways to ease that and potentially look for long-term solutions. For example, another example is Cahoots does not serve unincorporated areas. The story that we hear is that when you call Cahoots, if you're in the county, they say, oh, I see on the map that your neighbor is in the city. Could you ask this problematic person to go to the next lot and call us up, and then we'll take care of it. So those are the kinds of problems that we're trying to work with there. And to be fair, many of us who live in the county also pay lower taxes, but we're trying to work our way through some of those issues. I'll go on to the next one, land use. The challenge is going to be to develop reasonable transitions between existing R1 housing and higher intensity development that we're planning for. So, for example, well, let me read these three first. Establish programs where higher intensity use abuts R1 zoning and the adjacent streets or lanes aren't developed to Eugene's local street standard to avoid spillover parking problems. Do periodic review as automobile usage changes. Well, I'll jump into that one and then we'll come back to the other one. Pat and Claire and I have all worked on trying to resolve some of the issues that have arisen from the development of Echo Apartments. Echo Apartments is a fine facility, but our city's parking standards are such that there are not enough parking spaces within the complex for all the cars that people currently want to park there. So as in any other part of the city, they go out and park in the adjoining streets. But the problem with Echo Apartments and most of River Road is we don't have city streets. What we have is county lanes without curbs and gutters, and sometimes right of way taken up by vegetation and such that when people try to park outside of Echo Apartments, they don't find easy parking spaces to park in, and sometimes they park too close to corners. Sometimes they block people's driveways, et cetera, et cetera. Again, if we were in the city, we could call the city and they would come and enforce parking standards, but those streets are county streets and the county does not have a parking program. So a little bit of history. About 4 years ago, with our representatives' help, we got the city to annex the right of way of the streets around Echo Apartments for the purpose of putting in a parking program. We started negotiations on what that would look like. We were all excited, and then COVID hit. And something that you may not realize is the city's parking program is revenue dependent. And when people stop going to work, they stop parking and they start paying fees, stop paying fees, and there was no money to do a parking program around Echo Apartments. Well, we are proposing for many more housing developments, multi-housing, multi-use developments like Echo all up and down River Road. And we need some way to deal with the parking that's going to be almost certain to be generated as a result. Let me talk a little bit about transitions as well. Our plan proposes to increase development from the current levels along portions of River Road from what is there now, which is typically 1 or 2 story development, to maximum heights of 40 feet for corridor residential multifamily housing and 60 feet for corridor mixed use development, and 10 foot higher than that in some instances. Before that sounds onerous and why are you doing this to us, I would point out that some of those lots are actually C2 zone now, and they currently allow building of up to 120 feet. So this is a glass half full, glass half empty situation. We hope to have more intense development, but we hope it will be less intense than can currently be allowed. But at any rate, we will have a situation where housing that currently exists is likely to be next to multifamily housing or mixed use housing that is taller than it is now. So we want to talk about transition standards to ameliorate that impact. And what we have in the proposed code now, and this is not complete, is 4 sets of transition standards. I wish I could make this bigger, but I don't know how. But in this case, we're talking about having a 10-foot separation between an existing building and the new building with trees planted in between. The second standard on the right here would do that and then also require a step back for housing adjacent to it. The third one is just widening that distance and requiring planting in between. And the fourth one, because the issue for many people is losing the privacy in your backyard, would be a requirement that on any side of a building that is adjacent to existing single-family housing, we would say that above 40 feet, you cannot have balconies and large windows. So that you would be subject to whatever is currently allowed for R1, but no more than that. That was a proposal from the neighborhood group. The other 3 standards already exist in code. 4th one doesn't. And what staff is proposing is choose one. My question would be, could we potentially have a combination of any of those? So those are the big issues as far as land use is concerned. So I'll stop there now because those are the hot topics, and I'll turn it over to, again, our electeds to give a response or ask questions.
Could I interject for a second? I'm sorry, this is my first meeting, so I'm 100% playing catch up.
What we said we would do at the beginning is save questions to the end, except
Okay.
for the electeds, if you don't mind.
Yes, alrighty.
Thank you. Claire, would you like to respond or ask?
Yeah, so John, when you were talking about parking and that you've been in discussions with our parking services around a parking program, was that around like a permit system for residents, or what can you describe that a little bit further?
Well, we didn't get very far before
Okay.
COVID, I'll be honest with you, but we talked about, first of all, setting some sort of standards that would be typical for the city. And we hit the question of, well, how do you paint a curb when you don't have a curb?
Sure.
So we were talking about putting up signs, but we did talk about trying to put out standards that we hope people would follow. And if that didn't work, then we might have to go to a parking program,
Yeah,
which means that people would have to buy permits in order to park on those streets.
right.
But we wanted to try something less impactful before that, but we never got beyond, hey, what can we do?
Gotcha. Yeah, so I'll just offer a few words on the parking, and then I'll let Commissioner Farr weigh in if he wants, and then we can come back to the transition standards. So parking is a challenge, and probably the most effective way to manage not having spillover parking would be a permit system. Now, it does cost the resident the cost of the permit. I don't think it's an onerous cost, but it still is a cost. But I think in terms of effectiveness within the current parking services program we have, that's probably the most bang for your buck. I have complained about not having any parking enforcement after 5 o'clock. I live in Whitaker, and things get exciting here starting around 6. And parking, people park right in front of the no parking signs. But I've been told that staffing up a parking program past 5:30 would require a complete revamp of our parking program, and is probably not something that would be considered anytime soon. And then lastly, I will say that things might just get worse on the parking front because of these new climate-friendly, equitable community rulemaking that's been going on, which, John, I don't know if you've just had a chance to discuss this at RRCO.
No, we haven't, but I'm aware of it.
Yeah. So this was rulemaking that's happened out of the executive order that Governor Brown issued directing state agencies take action to reduce and regulate greenhouse gas and mitigate the impacts of climate change. So the Land Conservation and Development Commission spent the last 5 months coming up with rules to meet the governor's directive. And their their temporary rules, which will become permanent any day now, are going to require cities the size of Eugene to adopt land use codes that eliminate all minimum off-street parking requirements, or adopt land use code to eliminate parking requirements for certain uses and in certain locations, such as along transit corridors, and to adopt changes to parking programs, policies, pricing. So it's a currently unfunded mandate from the state, similar to House Bill 2001, that we're going to have to comply with. And I testified on behalf of the city against what they were doing and asking for more time. And when they questioned me and said, well, why isn't, why is this resistant? The city of Eugene, you're trying to reduce climate emissions, and why aren't you leading on this? And I said, parking, parking, parking. As a city councilor, that is one of the big issues I deal with, is people being impacted by parking. So I get it. And I'm willing to, advocate for your needs, but I'm just letting you know that this topic's just going to become more difficult.
Agreed. Originally, we talked about having higher minimum parking standards, and we recognized that that wasn't going to go anywhere. So we were hoping that some sort of a parking program would suffice. There's some question about whether the entire city has to have no parking standards or whether it would be a certain part of the city. When I've talked to city staff, planning staff, the impression I got, at least as far as the housing requirements, is they felt that it could be limited to the downtown area and the university area, not throughout the city. But I don't know what the rules look like now.
Yeah, and that is their first draft analysis. And then once the rules are finalized, adopted, they'll have to dig deeper and see if that's the case.
Thank you. But would you be supportive of a parking program for higher intensity development in our neighborhood? Even if it meant annexing right of ways and bringing the program out here?
Well, when you say parking program, what do you mean?
Some sort of a city program that would be applied into those areas around these new developments that would indeed make parking tenable around them.
Yeah.
Much as many of the other neighborhoods have now. But I do understand the after hours issue.
Yeah, so I'm supportive of advocating for your needs. What the specific thing is that's going to meet those, I couldn't say. I think that's up to Jeff Petrie to help us figure out. And as far as annexing more roads, that's probably not something that a majority of council is going to support.
If I may, you didn't annex roads the last time, you just annexed the right of way. So you didn't
Well,
take
that's
on
what
the
I'm referring
requirement.
to. Yeah,
Right.
I
But
don't
you
know
did-
that.
You didn't take on the responsibility for maintaining the road. That was very carefully crafted.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, I mean, yes, I would support that. If it's the route that city staff wants to keep going, I don't know.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate your candor. Mr. Farr.
Thanks, John. I'll talk about what you and I did over the years in just a moment. But the first thing I'll mention is that I'm currently a county commissioner. And while I spent 10 years as a city councilor, now my work is mostly mitigating city decisions that flow over out of the city limits and into the county. And John, you and I spent a lot of time in people's driveways talking through the issues. We had the sheriffs out there starting, I believe Tom Turner was the first sheriff that joined you and me in a driveway to talk about how do we mitigate the parking that's flowing over from, in this case, it was Echo Apartments. And we will have to live with it because the city continues on its path, and there's no real change in the direction that it's heading regarding limiting parking and limiting requirements for apartment complexes to have parking. So we'll continue to have the issues. Annexing the right of way, John, you and I went door to door on virtually every house in the neighborhood surrounding Echo Apartments and got people's input on it. And by and large, it was a pretty overwhelming support by the neighbors. And I would hope that that would be listened to by the elected officials such as myself, and to try to mitigate the issues that really are causing problems on a daily basis. We, meaning me, tend to make decisions based upon what we know and what we see. If we don't know and if we don't see people's driveways, and if we don't knock on their doors and listen to what is happening specifically to them, then it's going to be difficult for us to make decisions. So I think Councilor Syrett has really been a champion throughout this. I've listened to her, I've talked to her, and I really appreciate the work that she has done to help with, in this case, I'm talking specifically about Echo Apartments, but it's going to happen in other places. So I think, buckle up your chin straps, or whatever the term is, and be ready, because we are going to have to respond in ways that people who live in the county inside the urban growth boundary are going to be affected by decisions that are made inside the city limits.
And thanks, Pat. If I could just add one thing, John, that I just remembered. I think this is not something I've talked to the city manager about, so I don't know the practical possibility, but a policy that possibly the city could adopt is disallowing multifamily apartment complexes from charging separately for the parking, right? So
Right.
if you want a second space, they can charge you for that. But we could explore a city policy that would apply to all multifamily housing around the city, because I think that might have helped somewhat with the Echo apartment situation.
Yeah, you're correct. 50% of their parking is charged, and they have one or fewer parking spaces per apartment.
You know, if I may add this, John, our dream originally was to have a program not unlike what you see around Matt Court, that arena, where the neighbors can park, but you can't park there when you're when you're going to a ball game. You simply cannot park there. And I understand enforcement issues, but that just didn't materialize either on Dove Lane behind Willamette High School or on Picker Street, Hatton Drive. It didn't materialize.
Fair enough. Well, let's talk a little bit about that other easy issue, transitions. You want to go first this time, Pat?
John, I think the important element to me is really the third bullet on the slide that you have up, which I'm looking on my screen here, and ensure that planned increased density development is compatible with existing neighborhood and ensuring that it's economically feasible, making sure that it's compatible with what you moved there for, what you live there for. And there are ways to do it without dramatically affecting the quality of life or the style of life that people have. And I think, John, you talk about transitions all the time. You say it's one of the most important elements of the refinement plan. And that really is key, that we listen to what it is that people feel their neighborhood looks like and what they want to keep in their neighborhood. So looking at the choices that are offered, I'm not going to weigh in on any of them. I listen to neighbors and really let's hold people's feet to the fire and make sure that your neighborhood stays as close to your neighborhood as it can possibly be, while the mandatory increased density that we're all going to experience does occur.
Thank you. Claire?
Yeah, so I think the transitions that you all have honed in on here, all have really good merits. And I really appreciated, John, how you framed it, that current code allows for much taller buildings to be built in certain sections of River Road. And what you're doing by going through this process, regardless of which of the options you land on, is bringing that scale down to a more neighborly height than could be possible now if someone decided to develop a C3 property tomorrow, put their C2, thanks, C2 property tomorrow, right? So you're helping ensure to some extent what Commissioner Farr was just speaking to, that things are going to be more at scale while still allowing that increased density that we know is coming, and that I'll just remind you that in adopting Envision Eugene, which was adopted, some of it was adopted before I joined council, but the decision was to grow more densely rather than to expand the urban growth boundary for housing and commercial development. So that also ties into our climate recovery goals, right? So there are trade-offs when we make those decisions, and taller buildings is one of those trade-offs. I will express a preference in your for options, I think the step down option if I was had a vote, that would be most appealing to me. One, I think it looks nicer than, you know, a tall flat building. It may reduce how many units can be built in a building like that, but you know, I don't know what those numbers are, but and then I guess the concern about balconies and large windows. So I have an apartment building that, so my house was built in 1920. There was an apartment building built probably in the 60s, and they just have little windows, but it doesn't matter whether it's big or little. They can see into my backyard. Now they're not standing and looking into my backyard. They're at an angle, but I would also say trees do provide really good screening. So even if there was a building up there with windows or even balconies and trees were part of the barrier, it would provide good screening. So those are just some thoughts on those.
Excuse me, John,
Someone
can you
asked
go
if
back
you
to
could
the
see
visual?
them. Could see them again.
Yes.
Yes.
Which version, Claire, did you say you were preferring?
If I was part of the neighborhood and was, you know, asked to pick, I would pick number 2.
This one.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that was with the hard stuff. Let's get through the rest. This is another one that both in this land use area and in the Parks and Natural Resource area, we identified the Willamette Greenway is an important resource that we wanted to protect. And if you look at the map on the left, that is the green areas, strangely enough, are the areas that are designated as the Willamette Greenway along the Willamette, both on our side of the river and over on the east side, which sort of helps explain why their side looks much more developed than ours. So we have several action items in our plan that we hope will help protect our greenway. There are provisions, for example, on limiting the size, the height and the width of buildings along the greenway in the River Road area. Also, requirements for natural screening along the river that aren't there now. And we hope to see those instituted. But the part that's frustrating to me is that the way the draft code is written now, and hopefully it's not going to be the last part of the code, is you need a sub-district in order to enforce this. And the way that the code is written is they're saying the sub-districts will only be for those lots that are rezoned. So if you look on the right, essentially the same area, the only areas they are proposing to be in the sub-districts are these 3 red areas. So my hope is that this is an obvious faux pas and that we'll have some success in getting a sub-district if we could go that route that covers the entire length of the river. But I just wanted to point that out now. There is another potential route. We talked about those processes that are concurrently going on that are challenging for us. The city is in the process of developing clear and objective standards for the Willamette Greenway that currently exists. It's possible we can work through what we want to see in that process, but it's unlikely that we can develop standards that would work across all the Willamette Greenway, because what we're asking for River Road clearly would not work very well in the eWeb property, for example. So I just want to point out this challenge and the fact that it's work yet to be done. But I would ask each of you what you think about this issue quickly, if you don't mind. Claire, you want to go first this time?
Sure, thanks, John. Yeah, so just to be clear for everyone, the city is applying clear and objective standards to the Willamette Greenway because the state said we have to do that. The state governs the Greenway, you know, in terms of its basic functions and outline. It's not a city council policy driven situation. And then our land use codes have to comply with what the state dictates. John, this is the first time I've heard about the sub-district thing, unless you explained it to me in a prior meeting and I'm not tracking. But
It's hard to visualize without a visual.
yeah, it's okay. But if you adopt your plan, you will also be adopting a special area zone. And your special area zone can apply some additional standards within that greenway because it's a special area zone. So that is another tool you all have to influence what's happening in that greenway designated space. And then my understanding is that both Santa Clara River Road together have been giving input to the Planning Commission, who is the first part of the process, and that they are definitely taking your input very seriously. So you are having an influence on the process.
Yeah, we kind of have two bites at the apple here, so we're hoping that one will work. What say you, Mr. Commissioner?
You know, not a great deal to add, John, beyond what Councilor Syrett has said, other than, you know, you and I have talked about expanding Willamette Greenway provisions and requirements. And I think that much of this is going to be on the city's plate as opposed to the county's plate. But I'm paying close attention, John. Like I said, you and I talked as late as today about making certain that the greenway standards are adhered to in as large of an area as possible.
Well, I hope I will be able to report to you that the sub area, if that's the way, sub-district, if that's where we're going, will be more than these 20 lots by the time we're done.
And that's kind of what you said, is that red zone would extend, would cover the entire green zone, in effect.
Or at least that area along the river, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you. Okay, we've got two more areas with difficult actions, but they're not as difficult as these were. We want to protect and enhance our waterways that are not currently protected. We have a lot of areas that are Goal 5 and Goal 6 waterways that are not classified as such. So our hope is to get another review of that, to give them the opportunity they protect. Right now, people see them as the place to dump their garbage, or at least their trimmings behind the back of their house. We're hoping perhaps to purchase some of those as easements and protect them. And of course, we want to see the West Bank multi-use path work its way up through Santa Clara, and there are efforts to do that now, so that's encouraging. We want to support the Greenway as a riparian and wildlife corridor, and make sure that there are protections in there that frankly the current Greenway ordinance don't provide. And then again, easements for multi-path extensions to the river where possible. Try to limit non-agricultural development on class 1 and 2 soils, and increase local incentives to make those local farm owners continue to work the land, and protect prime farmland adjacent to the current UGB. So that's pretty wonky, but that's what we hope to do. And then the final one is transportation, another fun one. We want more protected bike and ped lanes to address our evolving need for access to services. As we get denser, we have greater need for ways to get around safely, not by car. Or again, more paths to access to the Willamette River in Santa Clara. One of our goals is to build an EMX line or other enhanced corridor for high volume streets with stops at active locations. Promote or add to our LTD transit stops, especially in these nodes that we're defining in our plan. And LTD has agreed to work with us where necessary to relocate transit stops that fit their needs and our needs as well. I think Understandably, they just threw down their stops every half a mile where it seemed to make sense, but hopefully we will bring them in coordination with where we want our notes to be developed. Fix Division Avenue and make it safer. That's going into process right now. There are plans to put a couple of mini traffic circles in that area to make it safer. Do something about our traffic flow, especially during peak hours with city, county, and state law enforcement. We often don't see a whole lot of enforcement on speeding back in these neighborhoods. Make accesses for businesses more efficient for traffic and for businesses along River Road. This one I don't think is going to make it to the list, but we were hoping to get rid of private streets and new developments. What we are starting to see, and those private streets that were developed 30 to 40 years ago are starting to fall apart, and nobody is going to take responsibility to repair them. And finally, have some sort of a street classification that fits our lanes here. There is no street classification that really fits what we have here and how it can be dealt with. So those are our last areas. Any last thoughts? Let's see, Pat first, I guess.
Well, thanks, John. I think, you know, the entire time you and I have been talking about your work in the River Road neighborhood, it seems to center on transportation at all times. You know, I think a case in point is when Willamette Street was reconfigured. What was that, 7 years ago? I was pretty skeptical about the way that changing Willamette Street would improve the flow. But if you've driven out South Willamette Street, you find the flow does feel a lot better than it did before the city made the changes and the enhancements that happened on Willamette Street. I think being open-minded and looking at the different options like center turn lanes, various things that cause the congestion on River Road can really be beneficial. I think you know, the transportation issues that you face in River Road, it's just not safe to walk places in River Road quite often. It's not safe to ride your bicycle in places on River Road. I think the neighborhood's spoken out that they want safer pedestrian access. They want safer bike lanes. And I think moving forward in that direction is what we all should support. This is something I'm anxious to hear what Councilor Syrett says, because this is her area of expertise. So please.
Thank you, Commissioner Farr. Yeah, so both this list and the one before, I think, are all excellent goals, and I support them 100%. And on transportation, I've already taken action to support your desire for better, more reliable bus service. And just as an aside, that is what generated this recall against me and accusations that I voted in favor of MX on River Road for nefarious reasons, when in fact I voted for the projects that were adopted on the moving ahead vote because it was part of your neighborhood plan. So I was very much seeking to be responsive to what you all have been talking about for both River Road and Santa Clara when I took that vote. And just as an aside, the vote that we took was really to empower staff to dig more deeply into what all of those corridors would look like. It's not a final draft and it's a done deal. Plenty of time for everybody to be engaged, including both neighborhood associations, on how that plays out. Absolutely very supportive of improving our bike ped transportation. I serve on the Lane Area Commission on Transportation, and we talk about things like, well, Congressman DeFazio, is working very hard, and the city of Eugene was instrumental in getting him to include a $6 million ask to have a bike pedestrian bridge over Beltline for Willamette High School there. Final votes haven't happened yet, but fingers crossed, we're going to get that funding for you all. And then extending the West Bank bike path up further north is also in our bike ped planning staff's vision as we think about how we improve that access. So I also like the other things that you guys had listed in there, like seeking opportunities for easements to the river path. And I really love the idea of watershed easements. We'd have to, oh, thanks, Jan. I knew I didn't have the name right. Thank you, Jan. North Eugene High School.
Oh, Wolverines, by the way.
Yeah, my apologies. And so I don't know where we get the money for those easements, maybe from grants to environmental, resource organizations. I'm not sure, but that would be a really exciting thing to work with you all on.
Great. Well, thank you for letting us put you on the hot seat, both of you. Thank you for giving us your feedback. And now let's turn it over to individuals who have thoughts or questions in the audience, on our membership. So what I ask you to do is use your raise hand in the reaction area of your screen, and we'll take you in order. And reminder, this is a discussion about the land use plan and its parts. So Aaron, would you like to kick us off?
All right. Again, I'm sorry because this is my first meeting and I'm fairly new to the neighborhood. I just moved in 2020. And I was scribbling down notes as fast as I could, but
there was a lot there. I apologize.
There's 8 things that I wanted to talk about. The first one, and I kind of reordered them as I was going, but
okay, Aaron, let's take them one at a time and let other folks have a question too, but go ahead.
Sure thing. First one is about the housing, and I would like the city of Eugene and the county, because I'm kind of in the middle of the incorporated, non-incorporated, to remove economic boundaries from creating ADUs, because it costs tens of thousands of dollars to be permitted just to make an ADU. I already have a structure on my property that was already the house originally, but I'm not allowed to turn it back into a house and allow anyone to live there without paying the city $10,000 just to start.
I understand, Aaron. That really isn't within the purview of our neighborhood plan, but the city is working hard to make ADUs more affordable. Clara, perhaps could you give him an answer?
Well, I can't speak to waiving all permit fees because permit fees are part of how we run our permitting department. I believe that I could double check. I think we've reduced the system development charges for that would apply to new ADUs, not existing structures. So without having more details, I can't be a lot more helpful right off the spot. It's a little.
No, I
maybe
understand
more
that.
technical.
And let me add one more thing, if
But
I
in
may,
terms
Aaron.
of in terms of a policy direction, try to find ways to make it easier to build ADUs. I am totally in support of that.
And I don't know if you're aware, Aaron, that the county has waived the requirement to annex property in order to build an ADU as well. So I think folks are working on it.
In this particular instance, it's already there. It was the original house that was built on the property. And then in 2004, a second house was built on the property. But more what I'm referring to is the economic hardship that it creates for somebody to build one. So if we want to talk about housing in the neighborhood, in the city, in the county, in the state, let's make it easier for people to build auxiliary dwelling units on their property that they already have. It's already hooked up to city water, city sewer, city power.
Understood. I think we're all in agreement with you, Aaron. I just don't think this is the purview of the neighborhood plan.
And Co-Chair Belcher, if I may invite you, Aaron, to give me a call personally, because we're working on rural ADUs at the current point in time. And Senate Bill, I think it was 391 in the last session, talk specifically about what happens outside the urban growth boundaries, we have a huge opportunity. I'd love to talk to you more in person about that.
Sure. Can I get your email?
You can. It's pat.farr@lanecountyor.gov.
1 R or 2?
2 R's in Farr. Yeah.
And one in OR. Anyone else with a question or a comment? Thank you, Aaron. Seriously, I threw all that at you and it all made sense and you like it, and I don't believe it.
I think,
Check the chat. There's questions in the chat.
Okay.
Jan might have his hand up.
Susan has her hand up. I see that.
Hi, yes, thank you. One of the questions I had is there are a lot of actions and priorities throughout the document. As John showed in the deck, I think there's something like 290 total actions within the document, 98 of them being high priority and difficult. That's not just the total number. There's more high priority or more priority items. I think there's another 8 medium priority, and then there's another low high priority, which I don't fully understand, but that's an awful lot of priorities. When you both think about this plan, if you were to give guidance to us as to what you've heard, you know, from your constituents and just in the engaging with other members of the community, you know, what are the things that you think we might, you know, if there's compromise required, how should we think about that? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Clara, if I may, I'll go ahead and shoot first. You know, you get that number of priorities, and it becomes difficult to kind of consolidate with an action plan. The way I like to look at priorities is tactics, and tactics can be handled really one at a time, and they can be grouped together into strategies. And as much as you can group tactics into strategies, then it makes it possible to move forward on multiple fronts with lots of priorities right at the same time with the same action. And as much as we can do that, then we're going to have the greatest success in moving all the priorities forward. Some of them, as we move down the road, will lose their priority because it'll simply become either outdated, outmoded, or, I hate to say it, impossible. So, but group them together into strategies.
Yeah, Susan, I really appreciate your question. One, I think your plan from the very beginning was rooted in some basic visions. And so I think referring yourselves back to that vision, which, you know, was informed by hundreds and hundreds of people's input, right? And really reflects the unique character of River Road and Santa Clara. So I think that's one way to kind of help you figure out like what are our top 25 priorities, right? And then I do think there needs to be some discernment, as Commissioner Farr kind of alluded to, that there's gonna be some things that you may just have to take a deep breath and say, all right, we need to just set that aside for right now so we can get these pieces done. And then we can come back to these other priorities that maybe we're not going to get through this particular process, but we can work on getting through other processes that they're happening within. I think the biggest kind of piece of advice that I would give you all as kind of a general thing is, you know, what you're looking at now is having your advisory committee, you know, adopt a draft plan that would then come back out to everyone for further refinement and then hopefully final adoption. And that final adoption is where all the hard work that you guys have done actually becomes pertinent. Because then, as Pat was referring to at the Whitaker refinement plan, which has not been perfectly executed, I will, you know, I'll admit to that, but it gives staff and council and county commission in where it's relevant, that backstop to say, what does the neighborhood plan tell us? as we make these decisions. So getting that final adoption done really does matter. And you've got some more time before that's going to happen, but I would encourage you not to hold it up because there are some things hanging out here that you really want to get done, and it's better to button that up and then put your energy into getting back to those other things.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'll also remind everybody else, if you haven't read the documents, they are located on eugene.or.gov. If you click in the bar just below the top header, you'll see Engage Eugene. If you click on that, you'll see our neighborhood plan. All the vision documents that Claire just mentioned are within that document. And we will make sure that we get posted the deck from today, which also includes each of the individual goals in the appendix that reflect the what came out of the vision document. So I think that's good reading. It's a little bit more of a summary for folks, because I after spending many hours this week learning and reading the plans, it's a lot to take in. And as just regular city people who don't understand the plan, we really appreciate y'all's help and your recommendations. So thank you.
So let me throw a couple things in here that came to mind. First of all, one of the things that's unique in this plan is it calls for periodic review. So depending on what that interval is, we would actually have a requirement that every 5 years you come back and look at the plan, see what worked, what didn't work, and revise as a result. That's never been part of plans before. They go and sit on a shelf, and unless there's a land use decision, they're pretty much ignored. The other thing I was going to do, and Susan did it well, is, get involved, find out what's in here, find out how you can provide input. This is the time when we hear from you guys. Don't show up at the last minute when the council's ready to drop the gavel and the commission's ready to drop the gavel and say, this is the plan, that's great. Don't raise your hand and say, wait a minute, you didn't knock on my door and ask me. This is us knocking on your door. So please stay involved. We've got 5 more minutes, so that's my end, but let's take the 2 hands that are still up. Gary, you hadn't gone yet.
Yeah, I have more of a statement, I guess, than a question on the transitions. It really depends on where it's at. If it's on my south side, it's now shading my garden and impacting the solar panels on my house. I need a lot more than just 10 feet. And I think Eugene has solar access. I don't know that they've ever enforced it. That it'd be something I'd like to see in our neighborhood.
But dig into that and see how it relates to our plan, Gary. We need to hear about it, because as you densify, you have these competing interests, and one of those is solar access and trees. So we need to find that balance. So help us figure out where it is. Aaron, you get another bite at the apple.
All right,
We
I
got
kind of
3
reordered.
minutes.
I reordered after hearing some other things, but we were talking about housing earlier, and what sort of buildings would be allowed and parking that would be associated with those. What if we allowed bike, walk, or bus housing only? Like it was designed to do that specifically. Everybody that moved in agreed to those things. I coincidentally gave away my truck about a year ago. I only have 4 miles to go for work, and no matter how bad the weather gets here, it's still not that bad. As my grandpa used to say, there's no such thing as bad weather, just the wrong clothes. We have tons of e-bike places here. We have Arcimoto that is actually developing a bike lane legal unit that is significantly less expensive. Why don't we allow that kind of thing to happen, where even if it's 4 stories, it doesn't need any parking, and we could house a lot more people.
That's a good point. That's kind of what the community, the conservation standards the state's looking at, is identifying places in the city where there would be no parking required. The thing you need to realize is that not requiring parking is one thing. The developer still can build it. So, but nonetheless, giving folks an option not to have parking if they don't want to have it is a possibility.
I
John,
would like to see that.
can I respond, John?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. I've actually, on council, have been probably the most supportive of that idea, but also recognizing that, you know, we can also then end up with situations like Echo Apartment where you think people are going to have fewer cars, but they don't, and the cars end up parking down the street and around the block and blocking people's driveways. So the way I've kind of been grappling with this is that we are in a transition. So Misty put in the chat, you know, like we're moving away from fossil fuels, right? We've got to get off of that. And we're in this transition. And so that's why it's so hard to navigate between, like, we need to make sure there's parking. Why are we dedicating land for cars when we need it for housing and growing food, right? So, you know, when City of Eugene adopted our required middle housing code amendments, we had recommendations that came from the Planning Commission that would have allowed for incentives to build housing along transit corridors without any parking being required, off-street parking. And a majority of City Council decided to reduce that, and I might have voted for one of those changes begrudgingly. So it's politically difficult still, but I think it is, in my view, where we need to be going. And so I appreciate you advocating for that, and encourage you to continue to do so.
Well stated, Claire. You know, I'll say this, that particularly with homes for good properties that have been developed, for instance, we opened the Nell last week. The Nell, which is a 45 unit apartment building, it's permanent supportive housing, but it basically has no parking surrounding it. So the people living there are pedestrian, bike and bus almost exclusively. You see the same with the Market District Commons, which is a 50 unit complex that is on county property down adjacent to the Market District downtown Eugene. Very little parking. It wasn't designed specifically for no parking, but the people who live there typically do not have cars because of their lifestyle. And if these facilities are built in places where it truly is a walking neighborhood, where you can walk to every single thing you need, including healthcare and including schools and including shopping and the various things that you do need, then it is possible. As we densify our urban core, as we put more residences right downtown, it's going to be far easier to do such. Because we in America, and I wasn't born in America, England's not unlike America, we like to drive, man. We like to pick up 2x4s at Jerry's and bring them home. You know, that's just the nature of the way we've evolved. But as we densify downtown cores, it becomes far more feasible, Aaron, to do that.
And the plan is intended not to be the downtown core, but to be more like that 20-minute neighborhood. So thank you all for listening to me for way too much time. Thank you, Pat and Claire, for joining with us and sharing your thoughts and hearing about our plan and helping us get it to the final designation. Thank you, everybody, for a dense but hopefully informative meeting. Okay, class dismissed. Thank you.
I do, and thank you.
Thank you, everyone.